Hi everyone, happy Tuesday. So tonight I'm going to be chatting to Sam, magician, Sam Fitton magician, all about magic and oh good, he's joined, so we can crack straight on with our questions. I'll just invite him to chat away. Connecting. By magic. There we go. Hi Sam, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, really, really well, all things considered and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, can you just, and I know loads of people say this, just magic us into next year, that would be
Uh,
amazing.
the number of people that have said
Yeah,
similar things, I'm just like,
I bet.
I'm good, but I'm not that good.
Yeah, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah, just to get it all. Although we're doing well, we've done, is it 7 weeks now? So,
yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, the first 4 weeks were like, it was as if someone literally just stopped the wedding industry, which was just super weird. It's the first time, certainly in the 12 years that I've been doing weddings, that
yeah,
I've ever experienced anything like that. And then luckily, the last 3 weeks actually have been really positive, really
good.
upbeat, lots of new inquiries, and it's like, I don't know, a bit of new life has come into the industry, which is lovely.
Yeah, it's good. It's just about keeping positive. I've been saying that to brides,
Yeah,
not just my own brides, the ones that just rung me for some advice or just that reassurance. Just keep saying, look, your wedding will happen. Keep positive.
yeah,
Forward to next year. And I have been for a while advising to just move to next year, rightly or
yeah,
wrongly. Also, they need a positive to look forward to. This year, they're still going to wake up with the unknown of uncertainty of, oh, do they have to cap it at 10 people,
yeah.
60 people? Don't know. So it's safer
Mhm.
to have a positive. So, yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, I've been literally been saying to all my couples, if you think your wedding is in any way, shape, or form going to be altered by
yeah,
these events, then
yeah,
move the date, postpone it. It's not a big deal. It feels like a big deal, but it's not a big deal. If you've got a good planner, if you've got good suppliers, it's actually a really simple thing to do. It just sounds scary.
exactly. And it's just about once you've made that emotional kind of I suppose I don't want to say get over, but you've made that emotional change within you to think next year. It's a positive, and actually,
Yeah,
yeah, it is very easy to do. It's just coming to it. So, yeah.
yeah.
So, cracking on with the questions. Then I sent you some questions.
And go for it. Yeah, this is exciting.
You replied quickly, like, "Yep, that's fine. I can answer all those." So I'm going
Yeah.
now. But so tell everybody watching though how you got into magic, and have you always done wedding and event magic, and anything else, and how long have you been going? Well, you said 12 years, didn't you?
Cool. Yeah. So I've been going around 12 years now professionally, which is I suppose, quite a long time really for
Yeah.
someone. I mean, I'm 32, so I started in the wedding industry pretty much straight out of university.
Right.
Um, and it was an accident, if I'm honest. I never intended to really be a wedding magician.
Right.
Uh, I used to do a lot of private parties, a lot of corporate events, and then when I graduated, like say in Lancaster, it was in around about 2008. In fact, it was 2008, and obviously we're in the recession, and all of my corporate clients dried up. And then out of the blue one day, I just got this phone call from someone saying, "Hey, can you be in this place at this time? We'll give you cash when you arrive." So I was like, it was literally in a few days' time. So I was like, "Yep, sure, no problem." Turned up and there was a bride, and I was like, "Oh God, what do I do here?" What do I do? And I just did exactly what I've always done, and just basically got hooked. From there on, then I just thought, what, weddings are fantastic places.
Happy.
Great audiences, lovely people, great vibe, and what I do seems to go down really well. So I'm just going to crack on doing weddings, and yeah, here we are, 12 years later.
Oh,
Still
corporate things then, or is it a different? I don't know. When I've done corporate parties, they're
yeah.
definitely different to plan. So, are they different to kind of perform in, depending what?
Totally, totally. Do you know what? I had this chat only last night. I run my own kind of live thing for other magicians, and it's all about being a wedding magician. And it is different, and I think it's because a wedding. It's not that it's just really hard to put into words that it's sounding bad, but you care a lot more about a wedding day.
Yeah.
There's a lot more heart and soul that goes into planning a wedding day.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that doesn't go into corporate events. It's just there's a much greater emotional attachment to someone's wedding day than there is a corporate event.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I honestly think that's one of the kind of the differentiating things between a guy who does magic at a wedding and a wedding magician. You know, a wedding magician understands that, and they do put their heart and soul into it, and they do make that event better because of it.
Yeah.
In the corporate world, sometimes you're there really to facilitate the night rather than actually add anything major to the event.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I suppose then that leads on to the next question then. So whenever people, my couples kind of think of, right, how do we fill the day and everything? Magicians, I know how amazing they are, and I know what
Yeah,
they can do for the day. You know, I've
yeah,
had for private events, I've had birthday parties and all sorts.
yeah.
And so I really promote really good magicians because, but there is this, there is a kind of cheesy kind of, people
Oh,
think
yeah.
kids magicians. Oh no, it's not a kids party, it's a wedding. But they're so different. It is so different, and it's amazing. So how do you
Mhm.
promote yourself or kind of market yourself to brides and get yourself higher up the kind of list of requirements
Yeah,
for the
the pecking order. Yeah, it's. Do you know what? I think it's an endless battle, to be
yeah,
honest. I mean, I'm not naive to think that I'm not way down the pecking order. However, I like to think that I've kind of clawed my way up there over the 12 years.
yeah,
Just through basically, I think it comes down to education a lot of the time. You know, couples are bamboozled when they're planning their wedding. It's why wedding planners exist, right? It's
yeah.
because you've got all that knowledge. And a lot of couples generally have never planned a wedding before. They've never planned a major event.
Mm,
So when it comes to kind of then looking for entertainment choices, of course they're going to be absolutely baffled. And
yeah,
that's before they've even seen any magic or even heard of a magician at a wedding. So really, when they land on your website or when they meet you in person, I always find I try not to sell the magic because I think I expect every good wedding supplier to be good at their core role, right?
yeah,
An event planner should be great at planning, a photographer should be great at taking photos. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what your role is in a wedding, you should be, for lack of a better term, shit hot at that thing.
yeah, yeah.
Right? But
Absolutely.
then what adds the value? Then what brings you up the pecking order is what you bring energy wise, personality wise, enthusiasm wise, and that's what kind of I always say to my clients. That is the thing that I always say, you know, don't get me wrong, my magic's amazing, but on the wedding day and for years to come, people won't just look back and say, oh my God, the tricks were great. They'll say, that was amazing drinks reception because you had this guy kind
Yeah,
of arrive and become good friends with everyone, and
yeah,
that's what lifted the atmosphere, you know. So
yeah. About that relationship, isn't it? And just
absolutely,
completely change. I've seen it where it's whether it's well, probably because of the weather, it's been a bit miserable. Kind of
yeah,
people a bit down, and then the magician starts, and it just completely changes the atmosphere
yeah.
to everyone kind of excited and like, oh, what's happening? What's happening? And it
Oh,
is.
absolutely, yeah. You almost create these little pockets of excitement around a room, and that generates the atmosphere. And if you're a good wedding entertainer, you know how to amplify that and how to make it even better.
Yeah,
You know, like I say, that's the difference really between a magician and a wedding magician. I think certainly is that knowledge of how the industry works and how weddings work, how people work at weddings, and kind of what needs to kind of what you need to do in order to kind of, I suppose, create those wow moments, which make a drinks reception or a turnover or a wedding breakfast, whatever it might be, better. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So on that then, so during the drinks reception, I mean, I've kind of experienced magicians drinks reception over perhaps during the meal, kind of in between courses. How do you, if the average wedding I do is between 120, 160
Yep.
people, how do you know you get round everybody and kind of entertain them
Yep.
all? Or how do
Yeah.
you have
It's
like a
yeah. Well, it's firstly next to impossible, I think. Unless you've got some sort of like eidetic memory, I don't think you could ever be absolutely certain that you got round every person. I've actually been to a couple of weddings in the past where I've noticed that I'm circulating the room at the same speed as other guests.
Yeah.
So you might have like the father of the bride who's also doing a loop around the room at the same speed, saying hello to people, and we've just missed each other. But there's always a special. I always plan something for the couple at the end of the drink reception, which I sometimes do privately. It depends on the couple. It depends what they want. But normally the people that actually don't get to see me as much are the bridal party, the couple themselves, because they're so focused on what else is going on. They're so engaged with obviously photographs, saying hello to people. They're just busy people. And so I always plan something big for the bridal party, for the couple, before the drink reception, before the wedding breakfast, so that obviously they all get to enjoy something pretty amazing before they go into dinner. So that's how I kind of combat it. But when you've got ultra big weddings, then, you know, if you're talking, say, 120 guests plus, then to be honest, it just comes down to time. You know, ultimately, one person can only get round so many people in a certain amount of time. So, you know, if you've got more than 120 guests, I'd always advise having more than just the 2-hour drink reception, because it's near enough an impossibility that a performer, unless you're roping in huge groups of people at the drinks reception, which is, you know, 10, 20 plus people all huddled together, it's highly unlikely you're going to get around those numbers.
Yeah, okay. Fab. So how then do you prepare for that wedding? Say, and do you do, obviously it's down to timings, isn't it? But you could potentially do more than one wedding in a, so how do you prepare like a typical week in the life of Sam the Magician?
Do you know what? Most of my job, I would say, once upon a time, I was once told by another performer who's now retired, he was like, 5% of your job will be performing if you want to be a professional magician. And I was like, yeah, right, sure. And he was bang on, absolutely bang on. I would say 95% of my time is taken up with social media, marketing, advertising. You know, what you've just said, you know, I'm, you know, as I say, I'm not naive to think that I'm, you know, I'm not exactly high up an order. I'm quite low down, and the lower down you are, the higher you have to work to be on people's radar. So, you know, I spend a lot of time on my advertising, my marketing, my website, you know, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, then you've got all the accounting and all the boring stuff on top of that. Then you've got dealing with the inquiries themselves. Then you've got calling couples, because I always speak to couples on the phone at the minimum. Then there's obviously the emailing and all that jazz. So a lot of my preparation involves a lot of just good practices that are running in the background that you will never know exist, that are there to ensure that I turn up. I'm always an hour early, for example, to every wedding that I do, without fault. And that's because I leave my house 2 hours before I'm due to book. So that when I arrive, I know that I am absolutely going to be early, or I can account for traffic or unforeseen circumstances.
Things to account for, isn't there, on their way to
yeah, and it's not worth the risk. You know, at someone's wedding, you can't gamble that. You know, I do know of people who have in the past, you know, set off with 5 minutes to spare almost. And don't get me wrong, that, you know, I live in, you know, I'm just north of Stockport, and so, you know, I've got the whole of Cheshire about 25 minutes, half an hour away. There's probably 150 venues in a very small patch of land that I can drive to within 20 minutes. But I would never in a million years leave it that fine. I would always give myself, and you know what? Couples love it. I turn up an hour early. I go and say hello to them. If it's at the drinks reception, I can say hello to the groom, because we've spoken on that before, so I can, you know, check in on them and see if they're all right. Or if it's during the dinner, during the turnover that I'm performing, I can go and say hello to them during the wedding breakfast. And it just puts the couple's mind at ease, because then they're not worrying about, oh, has he turned up? Is he going to turn up? Is he going to text us? You know, or all that jazz. So
that reassurance, isn't it? Especially if they do a planner, and you know, it's only 1 in 3 couples that seem to have a planner. So yeah, it's good that they know, yeah, you're going to arrive early, and that just makes them relax and think, great, he's here. And so I assume then you arrive and kind of, you're a bit you know, discreet. You don't let people know, because a lot of the time magicians are a surprise, aren't they? But,
I don't know why, but people often either assume that I'm a family member, because I don't dress. I like to think I don't dress like a magician. So when I turn up at events, particularly weddings, a lot of people just assume I'm a guest that they've not seen before. Or I just tell people, if people ask, it's like, excuse me, who are you? I just say, oh, I'm Lisa's cousin, you know, and they're like, oh, right, okay, yeah, great. No one has a clue. I've had people ask me for drinks before now, and so I've had to do a bar run for somebody. because I didn't want to blow cover. So I literally was walking past the table and someone was like, "Excuse me, can I just have 2 bottles of Peroni?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, won't be a minute." Went to the bar, bought 2 bottles of Peroni, walked back over with a tray, put them on the table, and £6, please, and then took the cash off it. But all for keeping face and for hiding. Yeah. So you get to have a bit of fun with people as well, and I love stuff like that though. But yeah, you're right. You do have to stay undercover and a little bit discreet. But obviously, if the couple have told me I'm a surprise, then I'm a little bit more discreet. If I'm not a surprise, then I never tell guests who I am generally until I start performing anyway, because I want it to be a surprise for them. I want it to have the impact.
Yeah, completely. It's more of an impact, isn't it, when you just start and you can just see people, edging towards you, see what's happening, and everyone
Absolutely.
around you for watching.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So then how do you decide? Have you got the same kind of set repertoire tricks, and you change it? Because this is one of my questions, wasn't it? If I get a lot of it's a lot of family crossover. So I've got a year where there's 2 sisters, and I know there's going to be a lot of crossover of guests. So if I have the same suppliers, that's been a benefit because I've made sure we're not booking the same suppliers. But if there was, how do you ensure that they're seeing different trips?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's a good question, and do you know what? It's one that made me go, yeah, you got a good point there. And I've got don't know if I should reveal this trade secret, but it's a little bit like, the way I look at it is that, well, I suppose first I should tell you that I have a couple of acts. Now I have, they're acts that I have honed to the point of near perfection.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, not only is it structured well as a performance for me, it's structured brilliantly for an audience, so it takes them on a little bit of a journey. Obviously, it gets better and better, and it's also been designed for photographers. So there's different moments throughout the routine which allow the photographer to take different types of photo.
Perfect. Brilliant.
So that the photographer can deliver different types of images to the couple.
Yeah.
So rather than them all just being the gobsmacked face ones, which, don't get me wrong, they're quite good fun, there's moments with fire, there's moments of shock, there's moments of genuine jaw drop, there's moments of laughter, there's moments of randomness, or what the audience think is randomness. Actually, it's quite well scripted. So I perform a lot of similar stuff a lot of the time. So certainly when I'm at a wedding, it will be pretty much the same act to every group of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of magicians have asked me why I do that. And the 2 things actually that made me absolutely realise why it was so good was, A, I became really good at that act, like so good that I wasn't getting caught out, nothing was going wrong, and because of that, I could relax and I could actually put on a show. And I could engage with people, I could interact with the audience, and I could freestyle a bit more. So, at the moment, I'm getting a bit of a name for myself in Cheshire, I think, for producing shoes from behind people's ears. So I can make my shoe appear from behind people's ears. It's funny. It's just random stuff like that. Which, you wouldn't be able to freestyle doing that if you weren't absolutely solid on your material. And the other reason why I do it is because I found if I do different magics at different groups of people, the audience and guests don't have a mutual thing to talk about.
Yeah, that's.
So they'll sit down with a dinner and they'll go, "Did you see that thing with the cards?" And he goes, "Oh no, he showed us a coin trick." Conversation ends because people can't really remember what happened in a magic trick. They just remember how they felt.
Yeah.
So by doing the same thing at each group, you've then got guests that go, "Oh, did you see the thing with the thing at the end? Oh my God, how did you do that? I don't know. How did you do that?" You've got this real natural conversation that develops. And I realised that about 7 or 8 years ago, and I thought, you know what? This works brilliantly. So a little bit of a trade secret, that. So if there's any magicians watching, I'm rumbled. But don't get me wrong, obviously, I always carry other things, obviously, in case I do come across people I've seen before or people want to see something different. My repertoire is massive. My bookshelves, they're huge. And, I couldn't tell you how many magic tricks I know, but predominantly you focus on your act, because your act is what will make people remember you. It's what will work.
And so, but do you not ever, it's probably a really awful question, but do you not ever get bored of it and think, right, I want to add to it or change it, or do you know? I
Yeah,
just
do you know what? That is the number one question I get asked by magicians. Do you ever why do you not get bored? I said, how can you get bored going to a wedding and amazing people for a job? How
yeah,
can you possibly get bored of that?
reactions. That's
It's
the
not
thing.
about me. It's not about the magic. It's
Yeah,
about the couple. It's about their guests. They've never
yeah,
seen me before.
yeah,
Yes, I've seen my act. I can't tell you how many thousands of times I've seen my act, but I have to perform it like I've never seen it before
yeah,
because they've never seen it before. And if you perform it like that and you act like that, it doesn't matter what you do in the wedding industry. You know, you could be a photographer.
yeah,
Might go to the same venue 60 times a year, but if you walk into that wedding with the attitude of, this is the first time I've ever done this because this is
yeah,
the first time the couple have ever done this, they're going
yeah.
to get a much better experience out of it.
Yeah, completely. You see, as a planner, every single wedding is so different because it's different,
Yeah,
different. It could be the same venue, but it's a different team of suppliers.
yeah,
It's different months, a different
yeah.
season. Always different to me, and so yeah, there's no possibility of me getting bored about anything. I just thought repetition, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, have you ever have you ever had a massive challenge where someone's said something to you and kind of you've gone, oh, I don't know, or they've asked you to do a trick and you couldn't, or what's been the biggest kind of challenge you've faced?
Ooh. Yeah, yeah. See, I've had a few of them.
Oh,
I'm trying to think of ones I could probably explain over an Instagram live.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I've had some quirky ones. I've had people claiming that I'm some sort of satanic worshipper. Um, um, I once did one event in Burnley many years ago where
Yeah.
I literally walked up to a group of people and said, "Hi, my name's Sam. I'm the magician that's been." And before I could even finish my sentence, this guy, and he was stacked, turned to me and just went, "We don't like your sort round here." And I thought, he's joking. So I was like, you're funny, you know, like this. And he looked deadpan at me. And then the lady who was with, must both have been bodybuilders or something because they were both absolutely stacked. She turned to me and went, "He's not joking. I'd leave if I were you." And I thought, oh my God. So I was like, you know what? Control Alt Delete. I'm out of here. Like, I'm not dealing with it. So you do get occasionally you do come across people, but you've got to understand. I think when you're a wedding performer, you are going to come across people who might not always 100% love magicians, and I get that. Some people have their preconceptions of what you're going to do or who you are, or maybe they had a bad experience as a child or something. Who knows? But you've got to kind of, to a degree, cut your losses sometimes, because there are guests at that wedding that will enjoy it miles more, and they will raise the energy in the room and the atmosphere. So sometimes you kind of have to just kind of, like I say, cut your losses with groups that don't enjoy it as much, but focus on the people that do love it, because they're the ones that are going to add to the wedding.
Yeah, I love it when you see guests who are a bit hesitant, a bit like, oh God, it's the magician. And then they're at the end of it, they're like, oh my God, did you see
Yeah,
what it is? They won't stop talking about it. That's
yeah.
what I
Oh yeah,
um, and
totally.
and then you go on and you can hear them chatting. Well, especially me later in the evening, you can hear them still chatting about it, still
Yeah,
trying
yeah, yeah. Trying to work it out.
to table or something, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And inevitably, those are the people that then will book you, or you might come across them later on in a few months or years
Absolutely.
because they've seen you. It is about educating people and saying actually it's a really good way of icebreaking
Yeah,
and getting guests together and chatting during the
yeah,
drinks reception over dinner.
definitely.
Yeah. So then,
Yeah, absolutely.
who inspires you? Who do you look to? I mean, I might not know many famous or many.
Yeah, you know what? There's plenty of magicians I could name who you'll go, who?
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, there's lots of magicians who A, never perform at weddings, B, never really perform. But it doesn't mean that they don't create amazing things or add to the kind of the industry that is the magic industry. But actually, my kind of, I suppose, inspiration in a way comes from outside of the wedding industry and magic totally. And I've always loved, and this is going to sound ridiculous to people listening, especially in the wedding industry, but I've always been inspired by inventors. So famous inventors from the past, because what I love about that is that they just had the balls, for lack of a better term, to go, you know what, this is a good idea. I'm going to run with it, and
Yeah.
one day people will love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true when you run your own business. Sometimes you have an idea and you think, no, my gut's telling me this is a good idea. I've
Yeah.
just got to have faith that it will work. And you know what? A lot of the times, that's what I found. That so when I've, been working on stuff in my business, whether it's my website or brochures or it doesn't matter what element of my business it is, I've just got to have the balls to do this, and it will work if I carry it off.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's who inspires me. Inventors. So like big famous inventors, Tesla, Edison,
Yeah.
Da Vinci's the obvious one. Think people like that who just were kind of, I suppose, visionaries and well ahead of their time.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that. Really
yeah.
good.
There you go.
Oh,
I
that
told you it was a random one.
good. I like that. That's when across my interviews and I've spoken to people, it's lovely getting to when I've asked that to a lot of people, and it's not what you'd expect them to say. It's not been a like a florist that's inspired another florist or a cake maker or
Yeah,
something. It's something completely different, and I
yeah,
know really great, isn't it? I'm gonna have to think of that
yeah.
question myself. Who inspires me?
Yeah, you know what? It is a good question, and I tell you what, I absolutely love watching. There's two programs on Netflix which I think everyone should watch, and that's there's one called Abstract, which I don't know
Okay.
if you've seen, which
Hey.
is it's amazing. It's basically about designers in different kind of, I suppose, industries. So
Yeah.
whether it's like one's on the guy that invented the Nike Airs, for example,
Oh,
and
wow.
design the Nike. So it's called Abstract. It's amazing. It's totally eye-opening. It's absolutely brilliant. If you're a
Oh,
creative or work in a creative industry, it's just incredible. Um,
oh,
and then the other one is it's just slipped my mind. Remind me, I'll come back to you.
oh.
I was too busy thinking about the next question. Yeah,
I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to read them here. Yeah, I suppose. Well, you've touched on lots of things that I was gonna
yeah.
ask.
Sorry.
Oh, it's good. I suppose. Have you ever walked into a wedding and just thought, oh, well, you've kind of mentioned it about Burnley, but
Yeah,
walked in, thought, oh, it's a really bad atmosphere. I'm going to have to do some real magic, amazingness to change this around, and
yeah,
do that. I mean, obviously, you're a really positive,
yeah,
energy person, so that
yeah,
rubs up. But have you kind of thought, "God, this is going to be a challenge," or met a bride and groom and thought, "This is going to be a challenge"? If they're,
yeah.
seem so keen on it, but maybe a family member's booked you or something.
Yeah, I mean, I was once, and this is something that I don't really do anymore, but I used to get booked as a surprise for the couple. So it
Right,
might be like the father of the bride or mother of the bride would book me as a surprise, and I never do that anymore.
right,
Because I once had an experience where I turned up and said, "Hi, I'm Sam the magician." Because the father of the bride had kind of said, oh, she loves magic. She's really into magic. She absolutely loves it. And then when I said it, she was like, "Oh, right. Did we book a magician? No, we didn't book a magician." And I was just a bit like,
uh, that's all.
"Oh, that fell a bit flat." So
Yeah,
I don't really do that anymore. So if the father of the bride ever gets in touch or mother of the bride, I always say, just check with the bride, or check with the groom. Just just touch base with them. If
yeah,
there's one thing I've learned, is that couples don't like big surprises on their wedding day.
yes, yeah,
They like to pretty much know what's gonna go on. So just in case they've got another surprise planned themselves. So you know, always like that's one scenario where, like I say, I walked in and was like, "Hey, oh," all quiet. So, and you know what? It turned out to be great. The guests were amazing. I had a right good time with them. And you know what? By the time the couple had kind of worked out what had happened and the father of the bride had explained, and
yeah,
it was fine. It was great. We had a good time. But it was just that initial, "Hey, oh," it just, yeah. So it's
yeah.
quite funny.
I know that happened to me once. Obviously, as a planner, I am kind of either creating or looking after those surprises. So
Yeah,
I when I'm creating my timelines for events, sometimes I can end up writing the kind of general one and then the private one that only so and so can see, or the family.
yeah,
I remember a wedding a few years ago where we had singing waiters, which
yeah.
quite often over dinner and stuff, and the bride and the bride's parents both knew. Nobody else knew. The groom didn't know, and oh my god, the groom gave me the worst evils when this performance started. And because it all started back in the kitchen with one of the waiters on the microphone swearing a lot and throwing plates and all sorts, and I was
Oh
high
God.
bar, try not to laugh. And it just so happened that wedding, they hadn't booked a videographer, so they just got some cameras from a friend, which
Yeah.
not really, but that's what happened. And I
Yeah.
was, so the groom was looking at me, and he obviously knew about me filming it, and I had to leave the film to go and pretend to sort out the waiter. So yeah, surprises aren't always, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Calm down, but he was almost that close to getting up and absolutely walloping this guy, and that was
Yeah.
that. But yeah, you have
Yeah,
to be.
I think surprises at weddings should come with the caveat that they have to be the most well-planned thing to happen, which is slightly ironic given they're a surprise. But I think
Yeah.
they genuinely, surprises need like superior planning.
Yeah,
It's just, yeah.
and at least other than the bridal party knowing, because then I could say to all, all the staff and suppliers and waiters and waitresses, no, it's fine. These are the people that this is what we're dealing with. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have had magicians where it's a surprise as well, and also booked by the couple, which is lovely for the reception, and we just haven't told anybody. Like you said, arrived discreetly and then just kind of blended in and started, and it's like, oh, it's just
yeah, absolutely. It's the best way to work. I think when you, especially as you know, the way I dress, like I say, is quite informal, really, for a magician.
Yeah.
I literally, I wear an off-color 3-piece, which isn't even a suit. It's a jacket, a waistcoat, and chinos. And because of that, I look like a guest. And that definitely adds a layer to what I do because, it's another surprise. It's another, it just makes people kind of sit back a little bit because they just weren't expecting it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's good. It's important, actually, across the board for suppliers to dress smartly. Where they are, they're at a wedding, blend in. It's like me, I don't wear anything branded on a wedding, blend in, apart from maybe
totally
holding a clipboard. I don't I just would rather people, they know I'm there, they bridal know, they can ask me, and generally people know what I'm doing and who I am, but no, I'm not all dancing, look at me. I hate that.
You know what, branding is super, it's something I'm a proper branding and marketing geek, really. And I absolutely love it. And don't get me wrong, if I could, I would have everything branded.
Yeah, I'm a bit like.
But there is a time and a place, for that. And I think people's wedding days aren't an opportunity to showcase yourself. They are inadvertently, because if that wedding goes brilliantly, they go, "Oh my God, how did you have such a great wedding?" Well, we had this planner. Oh my God, your drink reception is so good. Who was the magician? That's how you get the recognition. But certainly walking around with a sign, or a suit with your name embroidered onto it, or a badge, it's not. I don't think it's required. I think if you do a great job, people find out about it.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think it's indiscreet, kind of indirect marketing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then, is there anything you would say to kind of brides? I suppose brides and grooms when they're discussing it. Any kind of advice or tips or I suppose encouragement to kind of think of having a magician. I know as a planner, when people through the process, and I always do this right from the beginning and just go through the whole day and say, and it's always that drinks reception or over dinner or room turn where you say, well, or we could fill it with some entertainment other than the bar. You would encourage to say, to think about from your point of view as a magician, what bring to their drinks reception, wedding breakfast?
Yeah, great. Yeah, good question. So there's only 2 times in a wedding day that I recommend for what I do. And certainly the style in which I do it anyway, and that's the drinks reception and the turnover. Okay. I never recommend live interactive entertainment during dinner, because after 2 hours of waiting for food, the last thing they want is some guy rocking up and going, pick a card. The only thing that's going to win in that situation is the chicken. It gets all the attention, and it deserves it at that point in the day, quite frankly. So I don't compete with chicken anymore, is the long and short of it. And that came about because I was at a wedding one day. I'd been booked for the wedding breakfast. This is going back about 7 years now. And I was stood there watching this table eat dinner whilst trying to sort of get involved. And they were like, no, mate, And then the couple looked at me, I looked at them, I looked at the table, I looked back at them, and you could tell that none of us were winning in this situation. And I just thought, you know what? I'm out. little white flag. I thought I'm never doing the wedding breakfast ever again. So now I offer hosting instead. So rather than obviously perform magic during dinner, I do hosting. I've got my own sound system and mics, introduce couples, things like that. So that's the way I entertain during dinner. I can do a stand-up piece for the room as well if the couple want it. So that's what I do during dinner. But normally, if people inquire, it's drinks reception or the turnover for most weddings. And weirdly, I think weddings, like a lot of events, do revolve around food quite a lot. And I always say, your drinks reception basically is a waiting game for guests. That's when, ultimately they get champagne. They come out of the ceremony, they get champagne, they take a swig of that, they say hello to the people they're going to know, they congratulate the couple, and then they look at their watches and go, right, when's dinner? That's basically the 10-minute plan of a drinks reception if you don't have entertainment, because then you've got about an hour and 45 minutes of clock watching. Yeah. So that's where having something live, real entertainment, real people, because it's quite funny once. I once got an inquiry saying, right, I'm not going to lie, Sam, it's between you and a photo booth. Right. I was like, okay, so it's between live entertainment that's taken 25 years to craft and a spotty teenager with a DSLR in a box. Okay. I was like, don't get me wrong, I love a good photo booth, but have them in the evening when people are actually going to use them. Don't have them during drinks reception. Yeah. So I always find, drinks receptions, get people involved, get them active. Obviously, people are generally stood up at that point as well in the day, which means they mingle, they drink, they have a bit of coffee, and they stay off their phones. And so we have a good laugh. Then you go into dinner, might do the hosting thing or whatever that might entail, and then as soon as dinner's done, straight into the turnover, and another great time to have entertainment, because what happens here, thank you food, is everyone goes into a food coma because they've just spent 2 hours eating and drinking and half an hour listening to speeches. Energy gets sapped from the room, and what you need before, it's exactly what you need before a party is an energy sapper, isn't it? So what you want is just something there that's high energy and enthusiastic, just to raise energy levels. And that's what I tell guests. It's got nothing to do with the magic. The magic is just the vehicle I use to entertain people. Really, it's all about the energy that you bring into that room, because that's what will carry. You
see that kind of, like you said, the food coma, where they're just kind of like, ugh, and for the room. See, now I do most of my weddings are marquees, so we don't have a room turnaround, but fine. Reception would suit. I know in hotels we do. And that'd be brilliant, because my thing about hotel weddings is you lose, go and check in, go to their rooms, and I always say really careful, because if you make them, you've fed them, you've watered them, and then they're allowed to go to their rooms, let's bloom and hope they come back, because if they just go for a lie down, then you might not see them till the next.
You know what? I always say to my couples, if I'm booked for a turnover and it's a hotel, I always say designate someone at the end of the meal. If I'm not booked all day, and or else I do this obviously hosting during the wedding breakfast, designate someone to stand up and say, ladies and gents, that's the end of the wedding breakfast. You've got 20 minutes. Go and check into your rooms. Do what you need to do, but come back here for, give a time, and say, because that's when the amazing entertainment's starting.
Yeah.
And so long as guests know what the plan is, they'll follow it. The reason why guests vanish is because they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, because there has to be order of the day or something that says that. Exactly. So true. Yeah. See, I even do that, and I don't even think about it. It's just autopilot to me to kind of into them. Right, you've got to be back at this time, and we have the room ready, or the performance or the magician or entertainment start. So. Then tell me about your hosting then, because that's something I didn't know you did. So would you ever do magic reception and hosting, or just one of the other?
I do the whole thing. So literally I'm there from basically the crack of dawn. So the last one I did was actually on the day lockdown was announced. Oh, really? So the 20th of March. So I rock up early doors, obviously set up sound equipment in whatever room that the wedding breakfast is going to be held in. So I've got all my own professional speakers and microphones and all that jazz. And then, but obviously get changed, get ready to go. Ceremony happens. We jump straight into the drinks reception, entertain during the drinks reception, and then towards the end of the drinks reception, do my big thing for the bride and groom normally,
Yeah.
or the couple, and obviously the bridal party. And then if they want music intros, we can do music intros for obviously bridesmaids, groomsmen, the couple. Yeah. So I've got all my geeky setup, and I've got my, it's all wireless. So I've got kind of a wireless speaker setup and iPad that I can control it all from. So then we get everyone introduced, obviously, everyone's stood up having a party, and then normally straight into starters is how it goes. And then obviously get everyone's attention after food and crack on with the speeches. Again, if the couple want, with intro music for the speeches, which can be quite good fun sometimes. So I really enjoy it. I really like it because, as well as obviously perform at weddings, I've performed on stages and at the Edinburgh Fringe and stuff. And your job as a good entertainer is to be able to stand in front of a room of people you've never met, get their attention, and get build energy and build rapport with them, and so if I can spend 2 hours during the drinks reception getting to know guests, it means walking into standing on stage, as it were, as a host during the wedding breakfast and going, ladies and gents, how are we? And everyone just erupts. I've already got the report. Thank you, Jackie. I can see you. All right, Paul. And you've automatically got that rapport with people that you've already met. So it works. I think it works brilliantly. I love doing it. And actually, it's been super popular for couples who are postponing, because obviously they might have booked me for the drinks reception, and now they're like, do you know what? Screw it. We're going to make our wedding even bigger. We want you all day now, which is great. So that's happened quite a lot recently, which is great. It's great for obviously the couple. It's great for the wedding. It's brilliant for business as well. So everyone wins. But it's a lovely thing to do. Yeah, I really enjoy it.
I love that, because it can be, it can just be a little bit, not flat's the wrong word, but just having that energy. I think with the music, I've only done a few weddings where they've had music intros. I love it. It's brilliant. It really gets people. And
it really does, and it sets the tone. It tells guests, actually, this is going to be a fun wedding. This isn't all going to be super formal. Don't worry, you don't have to be on your best behaviour right now. We've done the drinks reception, we've had the formal photos. Now it's time to have some fun. Just because we're going into food, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fun. So and like I say, because you build that rapport during the drinks, it's great because you can use all those callbacks to previous events, which obviously tables laugh at, because the chances are people sat on the tables that they were stood with during the drinks reception a lot of the time.
Quite often,
So when you make a joke that might relate back to something weird or funny that happened during the drinks reception, that table then laughs, and then you can start having a lot of fun with people. And that, for me, that's why I love the hosting side of it, because it does blend quite seamlessly into the day, because you're known by guests at that point. So someone's just commented something which is actually quite funny. I think I'd be tempted to use Darth Vader's march as the music intro for the father of the bride. Yeah, you could do that if you wanted. I normally use "I'm sexy and I know it," I think, which is quite funny.
I've had quite a few different, I can't think of what they are now, but some really good ones. The best one I ever had, and it wasn't an intro song, was one of the last songs to talk about music, was the Baywatch theme tune. Oh my God.
Love it.
It was everyone there pretending to surf or slow motion dance like Pamela Anderson.
Great. Yeah, it's a great song. It was always played at uni now. It always played in nightclubs, just as like an end of night closer, just a bit of ridiculousness from the 80s, early 90s. But it's madness, and you can have a lot of fun. I mean, a wedding that I did at the beginning of March, where I was also best man, so I was best man and hosting. So they came into like they were big Star Wars fans, and so like just the warm up music while I was saying hello to guests was like themes from Star Wars, and got everyone's attention with the main Star Wars theme, and that was a great bit of fun, because obviously you can really tailor it to the couple, and that's why it's so much fun playing with the music side of it as well. It's good.
You building up that relationship, that rapport with your couple if you're hosting, to kind of know them and stuff, which is great. Kind of, so you're not some guy who turns up, does the magic. If you're doing the hosting, you get to know them and all those that they like, and this will go down well if it's something they haven't specifically chosen, but they'll love it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. I mean, you said the word rapport. It's all about rapport. Like from
yeah,
the word go, it doesn't matter whether I'm performing at the drink reception, turnover, or I'm there all day. It's
yeah,
all about building rapport with people. I'd say about 70% of my job is rapport building. 20% is probably comedy, and 10% is magic.
yeah,
If you were to work it all out.
yeah.
And I can't do maths. 10% is something else. Yeah. I forgot what I said.
I found it for next year. Then you mentioned about postponements and stuff, so that's great that people are kind of upgrading
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
the magic to hosting as well. So
Yeah.
like fully booked next year? Are you still? I mean, because I kind of
Yeah.
mentioned you 2 in a day, but maybe not if you're doing both the magic and the
Yeah.
hosting.
Yeah, if I'm hosting, there's obviously only ever one wedding in a day.
Yeah.
If I'm not hosting and I'm, say, doing a drinks reception or doing a turnover, then I have the flexibility to do
Yeah.
2 in a day. The reason being is obviously I don't perform during the wedding breakfast, which is my kind of travelling time between 2
Yes.
weddings.
Yeah.
So it does enable me to do 2 in a day. Although I don't always do it, it does depend on location and whether I can stress myself out enough getting, because I like to be there an hour early. So
Yeah.
it has to really work, it has to really work out for that to happen. But yeah, I mean, next year's looking fairly good actually. It's really random because obviously a lot of venues that have had to postpone now are kind of, I wouldn't say they're pushing people towards earlier dates next year, but certainly January, February, March time are starting to fill up now, which is very unusual. I don't know how you find those months, but historically those months have always been the quieter months.
Yeah.
However, they're looking quite busy now for next year. So if you're getting married in early next year, I'd get in touch soon with everyone.
Yeah.
Definitely.
March onwards, I suppose, is busy for me, but January, February, I'm trying to keep. I've got a few inquiries for it, but just for like on the day planning and stuff, on the day coordination or whatever. But
Yeah.
yes, I'm trying to keep them quieter, just because although I'm trying to prep everything now and do all my timelines now, obviously I can't do too much far ahead. Do a lot of it, to go or so. But yeah, they are notoriously very quiet those months. But I think it's going to change.
Well, it's. I mean, to be honest, I made the decision 4 years ago. I'm going to say it was 4 years. Yeah, it was. It was 2016. After I had 2016 was one of the busiest years I'd ever done in the wedding industry. I did 118 weddings that year, and it was an amazing year for business. But I just couldn't handle it. Like I got to like the September, and I was becoming complacent.
Right.
And the worst thing was is that I'd noticed I was and didn't do anything about it. And that's when I knew that there was a problem.
Yeah.
And so I just decided there and then, do you know what? It was just almost fortuitous, really, that I had 2 weeks without a performance then. So I took that 2 weeks off, restocked, kind of got myself together, and just decided, do you know what? From 2017 onwards, I'm going to cap 60 weddings.
Yeah.
So now I don't do any more than 60 weddings a year. And with that comes almost the freedom to kind of, I suppose, do every wedding as well as I absolutely want to do them. It's on kind of my terms. I get to put the energy and life into it that every wedding deserves, rather than running myself into the ground and just turning up and being like, right, magic, okay, yeah, here's a card trick. No one deserves that on their wedding day. And so that's why now I cap it at 60, just over 1 a week on average. And you know what? I found that's a really nice balance, which enables me to still have all that energy that you bring to an event and not to burn out, basically.
That's what you need to. There are some suppliers I've heard of that just keep going and keep going. You think, gosh, I cap each level of so full planning is capped, and then on the day planning is capped, because you've got to be fresh and energetic and
Absolutely.
Couple. The nicest thing a couple ever said to me is that I know you've got about 30 or 40 weddings on the go, because obviously I've got, well, it would normally be like the year you're in, and then there's the whole of next year and the year after. So it could be 3 worth of weddings all rotating. But she said, I never feel as though, I always feel as though I'm your only client. That's great. That's how I want all of my couples to feel, that I devoted to them, because it completely, if you run out of energy and enthusiasm, then why are you doing it? So
absolutely, you're dead right. That relationship to have, and relationship is the word. It's so important to have a good relationship, I think, with your clients, to build that good relationship, because that will last a long time. Certainly in your case, because it's literally you're going through, especially doing an all-day plan. That is a long time you're spending with this couple. It's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of heart and soul. It's a lot of enthusiasm. It's a lot of passion, and having a good relationship with them is super important. And for them to feel like it's a one-on-one thing is amazing. It's something that I, absolutely strive for. All of my couples, I hope, feel like at any moment they can pick up the phone and call me. And have direct email contact and all of that. I'm very hot and responding to things. And I think that is really important. And even though I might do more than one wedding in a day, couples will never know that.
Yeah, exactly. You never feel like you're being rushed off and I've got
to get... No. Yeah, I would never turn around and go, right, well, thanks very much, folks. Got to get to the next one. It would never, ever feel like that. It should never feel like that, and it will never feel like that, because that it's irrelevant. It's that couple's wedding that's important.
About their day, isn't it? Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All about. So, wrapping it up, really. Are you going to show a trick? I did say you.
I can show you a quick trick. I was trying to think what I could show you, because obviously we're on camera. So I thought I'd do something vaguely relevant. Right? Obviously, I'm wearing a t-shirt here, no fancy suit, no sleeves. Yeah. So this is quite tricky, but I thought I'd try something using this bit of paper with my little motto on it, which I think might be the wrong way around, because it depends how Instagram does it. Maybe if I hold it this way, you can see it the right way around.
Yeah.
Here we go. Watch this. Very important. Here we go. If I fold it once, twice, 3 times, hopefully, just with a blow, that should be the moment it changes into a real, genuine £20 note. Like that. I know, right? But obviously, all good things must come to an end. We all know this. So, if I take the £20 note and fold it once, twice, 3 times, hopefully this should be the moment. With just a blow like that, it should change back into our very important public service announcement.
Oh, that was brilliant. Very
Thank
good.
you. There we go.
Oh my God, I've always wanted to know how people do that.
Hopefully you still don't know.
I know, whenever I've seen magicians, not necessarily at my weddings, but when I've had private events and at parties for family and stuff, and I'm filming them, and they go back in slow motion.
No, not a clue.
Never work it out. I'm watching, I've been to see Darren Brown, and then watching Dynamo on TV, and like I said, my middle son's fascinated by magic and watching it, and they'll know how he does his tricks. But yeah, it's just amazing. It's just, how can you not be entertained by that?
I think there's always a natural fascination with the mysterious / the unknown. I think it's a natural human response to kind of be intrigued by it. I also don't blame people for having the natural reaction of, bit weird that, because it's, you are in effect doing something that isn't possible. However, obviously, it all comes down to style of performance. Obviously, like you mentioned, Darren Brown, he's famous for taking magic and making people believe, without really telling them he is one, but making people believe he can read minds, which is, dare I say this, total nonsense. It is just very clever illusions. You can change the style in which you perform, similar tricks. And, there are tricks in my own stage show which are very similar to what Darren does, but performed in a way that have a completely different reaction out of an audience, or get a certain reaction. So I always focus on having a lot of fun and bringing a lot of energy to my performances, whereas obviously Darren's very serious.
Oh, quite scary actually.
Very intense. Great performer. Amazing performer.
But I like going back to what you said at the beginning. You have thought about how you perform as a magician at weddings to get those reactions for the photographer, the videographer, the guests and everything. And that's so important, I think, as a planner, when I'm recommending suppliers, to know that, okay, well, because as a planner, I've gone and actually built marquees, I've shadowed photographers, I've gone caterers. So I understand how I feel as though I know how that works, but I love to experience it and know. And so then when I'm creating a timeline, I can understand how demands they need and requirements.
Yeah.
So I think it's great addition you've really thought about those other suppliers and how you have and the guests and their overall experience, rather than just going, right, I'm doing some tricks, here you go, watch or
Yeah.
don't watch.
You know what? As far as I'm aware, I don't think there is any other magician, certainly that I know of, that designed their act for a photographer.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, it's not just for the photographer. It took me a while to kind of come up with it and to pace it out and to routine it properly so that it benefited everyone. You know, so the audience loved it, the couples loved it, the photographer got the shots he needed. You know, that's why it took a while. And like I say, when I developed it, I figured actually if I use this at every group of people, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, that level of thought, I think, is really important because ultimately, I think maybe, I can't remember how many years ago I realised this, but, you know, weddings aren't about any singular supplier. No one supplier can pull off a wedding. You know, the venue, just because you've got an amazing venue doesn't mean wedding's going to be amazing. Just because you've got a great planner, just because you've got a great magician, doesn't because you've got a great singer. You know, all of those people, absolutely, all of those people have to pull together to make an amazing wedding. You know, and this is completely overlooking people who, you know, like makeup artists, florists, hairstylists who often get overlooked on the day because their work is done by 7 or 8 a.m. You know, when actually, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was only saying that earlier to one of my lovely florist friends, saying, you know, it's all about a team. There's I'm only as good as the team I kind of pull together or kind of, you know, the work with. So it's, and if there's anyone who kind of isn't a team player, it just makes it more difficult. It just makes it hard work.
Totally, and I've worked with photographers like that, you know, which can be the hardest sometimes because, you know, I know my act and I know the way it was developed, and some photographers, you know, I might, you know, I always, because I'm an hour early, I'll always say hello to the photographer, obviously, introduce myself to everyone that's working at the wedding that day, you know, make sure I've, you know, checked in with them, checked if they need anything or if I can do anything or whatever. And, you know, so sometimes you can come across a photographer, very, very rarely now, very rarely, but certainly in the early days when, and I think styles have changed since, so it's fine now, but where I would say, oh, just to let you know, I'm doing this thing. And, you know, I once had a photographer tell me, don't tell me what's going to happen. Like,
Really?
right? Well, yeah, I'm just giving you a heads up because before it happens that you know where to be and what to do. And he's like, don't tell me how to do my job. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just trying to help, mate. You know, so that can happen. You know, that, I mean, last time that happened was years ago, but it has happened, you know, whereas, you know, now these days, I mean, chances are if I go to a wedding in my local area, I've worked with either the photographer or videographer before.
Yeah.
So when I rock up and I'm like, oh, hi, you know, great to see you, James, or great to see you, Adam, or whatever, whoever it may be, you know. Absolutely, we know how each other work. We know, you know, they know what I do. I know what they do. I know how they like to shoot, and because of that, you get even better pictures. You know, so you know,
exactly. It's all about the team, isn't it? That you're with, definitely.
Absolutely. Totally, yeah. So yeah.
I've run out of all my questions now. Anything you want to say to anything kind of for next year, brides? Well, you said brides inquiring. On and get
Do you know what? I've been amazed how over the last 3 weeks how positive and energetic new inquiries have been for weddings, and I think that's lovely. You know, I think now is a really good time to be planning your wedding. I know it might feel a bit counterintuitive given the circumstances, but there's a lot of wedding suppliers at the moment sat at home looking at their diaries, and yeah, don't get me wrong, some of us are incredibly stressed out. Some are frantically rearranging couples. I mean, I think I've rearranged just under 30 couples so far. And, you know, it's likely it's going to be quite a bit more than that. So, you know, we are, you know, and I think good suppliers are able to do it easily and hopefully as stress-free as possible. But my advice to couples at the moment is spend this time getting in touch with suppliers. I always say phone suppliers. You know, yes, they've got an all singing, all dancing website. I'm one of those people. But pick up the phone, call them.
Yeah, speak to them, call or something. I just think it's nicer, isn't it, than just
miles better. You can get done in a 5-minute phone call, which would take about 25 emails. and and you're building that relationship at the same time. And if you really like the way someone is on their website, or you get a good feel from them, or you love the images they're taking, or you like the weddings that they've been planning, or you like whatever, if you're going to call them, you'll get such a good vibe from them on the phone. You'll know pretty much in that phone call whether or not they're going to be right for your wedding.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice to couples at the moment. Spend the time wisely, phone wedding suppliers, and have a right good natter with them,
Yeah.
basically.
Good advice. Very good advice.